Father Paul Michael Piega was born and grew up in Queens, New York. When he was 8 years old, him and his dad, mom, and sister moved to Dallas, Texas. He went on to study at Texas A&M University, the same university he serves now as a priest. Shortly after graduating, he entered seminary. Father Piega grew up in a Catholic family. Both his parents were born in the Philippines, the third most Catholic populated country in the world. When they immigrated to the U.S., they brought with them this deep love of the faith.
My mom studied nursing, so pretty much a lot of Filipinos are in the hospitality industry. So my mom, when she immigrated, the States needed more nurses, and so she felt the call to live out this vocation, living out this life in service for helping others and caring for others who are sick in that way. And so she was a nurse, and actually how my parents met, this is really neat. So my uncle was actually sick in the hospital, and so this is my uncle on my dad's side. And so my dad was one of the closer brothers to my uncle, and so my dad would be with my uncle at, when he was sick in the hospital, and my mom happened to be the nurse for my uncle. So that was pretty neat. And so that's how they first met. And then my dad, on the other hand, his studies were actually in the architecture. And when he immigrated to the States, that was not really in demand, and it was very difficult. And so he resorted to pursuing medicine again. Go figure. And that's where my dad pursued my mom when they both immigrated. So my dad actually immigrated to California, is staying and living in the Walnut area in LA and California. And then my mom was in New York. I just recall from my grandmother, we call her Lola, my grandmother would share with me stories of all the letters that my parents would write to each other, because, they were distant. And so they were writing letters to each other. And I remember a beautiful image of just my grandmother saving all those letters. And I kid you not, it was maybe hundreds of letters that they would write to each other, which is pretty neat, which makes me think about, I should probably ask about it. What do they say to each other? Because, you think about, we're receiving the letters of St. Paul to all these various churches that were in modern day Europe, right? But even the Middle East as well. And so I'd just be curious to see what kind of things they said. But yeah, so they wrote each other letters, right? And then my dad eventually pursued and moved to New York, and that's where they got married and had me. My dad was such a great man of God, was very faithful, and he would tell me he would be an altar server. So when he was growing up and back home in the Philippines, and so it's just neat, just the faith in the Philippines and the culture was brought over with my parents, and they continued that tradition and this legacy of imparting this wisdom and sharing the faith with myself and my sister. And there's very much so a lot of truth to the fact that, because of the witness and the living out of my parents' faith, that I would say was one of the main reasons why I'm a priest today. And it's quite interesting because as I was growing up, as it being part of the culture, at times I didn't like it because it was kind of forced, right? And so, here's a Catholic priest saying, whoa, like, you didn't really like it at that time. And so no, and to be honest, like, because it was so ingrained in our faith, I was a little, in a way, kind of turned off by it at first because, it was just what we do, right? And the things that we do. And so, but it wasn't until I arrived at A&M and really saw the faith life here, especially at this campus ministry here, and just seeing other young adults so on fire for the faith and so joy-filled, I desired that. And so I investigated, and so I really tried to understand, like, okay, yes, I've received this gift of faith in this Catholic Church for a reason, but do I really know everything about this faith? And why is it that I am Catholic, right? Or why is it that, I was baptized and such? And so it was there where I really discovered and was reignited, I guess you could say, is with this faith and really learning more about the faith. And from then on, it was, I guess, the Lord really started to work in many ways, in beautiful ways, and really was working on my heart to understand that He was calling me for a particular purpose in this life. being here in Texas, we're like in Bible country. There's a lot of our Protestant brothers and sisters, which is great. Shout out to all of our Protestant brothers and sisters, which is awesome. But at the same time, really being challenged, right? And challenged in many ways of why do I believe what I believe, and why do I say what I say in Catholicism. And so it was through those questions and those discussions, those great conversations with my brothers and sisters who are of the Protestant faith, really inspired me to learn more about why do I believe what I believe, and why do I say what I say kind of thing as well. And so it was that kind of push and drive that helped me to grow more. But then also I would say is just seeing the joy as well, right? I truly believe joy evangelizes, because when you see someone so joy-filled, you want that. You want to be happy. You want to be joyful as well. And so I know for myself, seeing the example, seeing the witnesses of other Catholics living out their faith with such great joy was such an inspiration for me to be able to desire that. And what was it that made them so filled with joy?